So I am honestly reconsidering my life choices as becoming a tax attorney. I'm just at a point where I am super frustrated with the federal government to the point where it is almost impossible for me to advocate effectively for my clients without redoing work 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times because the government is unprepared and unable to do their job efficiently. Just like real in the past few weeks, okay? A lot of people are getting fired. I understand that, and I have a soft spot in my heart because they are getting caught up in political turmoil. But that agency has to run effectively. We are all participating in it, and it is not good enough to say, well, sorry, we don't have enough people, or sorry, we lost your paperwork, or sorry. It's not good enough. These are people's lives. This is due process, and people deserve to have their case heard and for the government to be prepared. I had 3 appeals hearings last week. One of them, call in, nobody answers, didn't show up. I'm assuming that person got fired or let go or took the resignation offer. The second one, I got a fax like a week before, and it was like, I'm resigning effective immediately, and your case will be reassigned. Good luck. And it's like, well, we've been waiting for this hearing for quite some time. I have some people that have been waiting for their appeals hearing for over a year. The third one actually is a very nice lady. I've worked with her before in appeals, and she was like just really honest. She's like, honestly, morale is so low over here. You know, working the cases is, you know, we're already overwhelmed. They were overwhelmed before, but at this point, people are being fired and then given like 30 minutes to clear the building. They have families, obviously. And so it's bad on all sides. It's bad for the people that work for the government, and it's bad for the American taxpayer. And I think it's starting to make IRS employees realize that the system doesn't care about them either, right? The federal government that's being run by the 1% does not care about the American people. It also doesn't care about the people that work in these institutions, right? They're just also part of the bottom 99. So it's also interesting when I have conversations with appeals officers or IRS employees that used to like see themselves as defending this great, you know, we're better than everybody else because we're defending, you know, the United States government. They're starting to realize the government doesn't care about them either, just like they don't care about the American taxpayer. And it's so interesting for me to see their mind shift. Because when it comes to defending everyday American taxpayers, the government treats them so poorly. They always assume they're doing something criminal and awful, when actuality, it's, you know, they had a death of a family member, they got divorced, they have life things going on, they have cancer. And sitting there and calculating their taxes all day and doing it perfectly, sometimes they rely on a professional, and that professional does a bad job. There's no sympathy, ever. And it's like Congress created this really complex system, and they don't have an institution that can enforce the system effectively. Last thing on this rant. The other day, I called in for an appeals hearing. This is what really, really made me upset. I was very angry because there was about 900 pages of documentation that had gone back and forth, and I have copies of everything. So I call for the appeals hearing, and they're like, well, we don't have anything in the administrative file. And I'm like, that's interesting, because I have probably more in my file than you have in your administrative file, and your job as a government is to keep everything that's been sent to you in the file. Like, how are you going to make a determination on the government's position or the taxpayer's position being right if you don't have a full and accurate file? You like, if I showed up, oh my God, if I showed up to court and was like, you know what, I don't have any of the files, I would be fired on the spot. I'd probably lose my license. And so, like, dealing with the government gets to do that. They get to pull that card. They get to not be prepared. They get to not have the files. They get to lose your files. And it's like, oh, sorry, that's on you. You should resend them. And it's like every time I resend or redo work, my client has to pay for that. Now, I do flat fees, so really they don't. But in a normal legal sense of a normal firm that does hourly billing, the client's paying for that over and over and over again. And the government's not being held accountable. So that's the end of my rant. I'm frustrated. I don't think it's going to get any better anytime soon.